Hemshech Hayim Beis, Volume 1, Chapter 177, page 361, Shin Samach Aleph. So we're in the middle of a discussion of Torah. Torah as being part of the interface. Not part of Torah as interface. Kutsha Brichu Istakel Bar Raisa Bar Alma. God used the Torah as a blueprint. Looked into the Torah and created the world. So we're explaining that Torah has two aspects to it. How it relates to the world, because it's a blueprint of existence. And how it serves as God's blueprint. So it does both elements, the interface. And both elements of the interface, meaning, as in the lashon of the pasuk is a ches lamed in Mishlei, Proverbs 8:30. Ve'eye etzlei omen, shashuyim lefanov. That I, Torah, was by him nurtured by God. In other words, I'm like his intimate child, so to speak. And meaning intimately familiar with what God is all about. And v'shashuyim lefanov of his delights, his inner delights. Tzlei. That Torah as it stands, as the divine, as a expression of the divine. And as we explained, Al Tikra, Amen, Elo Oyman, that Torah also nurtures as a result. Because it was nurtured, it could nurture. So it gives us the ability to understand this divine. That's its role. Why do we need it? In souls, because when souls come down to earth, they don't just come down without unfiltered. They come filtered. It's concealed. They go through many concealments, and they stand in this world where they become manifest and engage the animal soul and the body, and as such are just to give it a good example here. You see, the soul is learning Ayin Beis and engaging in the body. We have here a demonstration. We don't know how much they're enjoying it, but definitely immersed. So therefore, you need a Torah to wake us up and remind us that that's not who you really are. Like the many examples that people get kidnapped or held hostage or sent away from their homeland and they live in another land and they lose sight who their true identity is. So Torah is here to remind us. Torah mitzvahs are here to remind us. And to awaken that spark, to awaken that soul that's there, but it's concealed. So there's the Torah as it relates to us, which David HaMelech spoke about. For this he was admonished, punished. He says, spoke how the Torah is doing something for him. What is it doing? It's helping him transcend his difficulties by recognizing the whole world is dependent on one detail, and it also uproots the weeds, l'zamer aritzim, from Zmiris. But what he was punished for, that he was meshabech, that there's belayla shira imei, there's a shira imei kri. It says also Al Tikrim, it says Imi Kri. Shira Imi, this is God's Shira. Zimra is with Kalim, so it's already relating to existence. Shira is without this singing Bepeh, as he explained. So it relates to the divine. And that's the dimension. Chetzeni Satera and Primis Satera. Okay. So to explain this, he began what it says in the Zohar, Tfas Kishre. There are three bonds. Yisrael, Araisa, V'Kutsha Brichu. So Yisrael binds itself to Torah. And through Torah, it binds itself to the Eibishter. So the simple interpretation is that Yisrael needs Torah to connect. The divine should be illuminated and revealed in it. Obviously, there's also another interpretation which we'll go to, which is that Torah receives also from Kutsha Brichu, and that also is through a neshama. So by learning Torah, they also mamshech Torah, alukus into Torah, and reveal the connection of Torah to the divine. So explaining that, basically it comes down to that there's two stages, or two levels, you can say. Well, before I get to that, so Hiskashrus indicates on two separate things, ostensibly seem separate, or else you don't say Hiskashrus, you say Dveikus. Hiskashrus means you're tying together two things. What are you tying here together? Yisrael, you're tying because the neshama comes down, is concealed, so it's tied to Torah, to godliness through Torah, and the Torah, because it comes down in Chochmah, it also comes down a dimension that relates to existence. So it too needs to be bound to the Elokus that's higher than Chochmah. And that's also done through the study of Torah by neshamas, by souls, down on earth. And this comes down to two stages in learning, in study. There's Torah Lishma, which means L'Shem HaTorah, for its own sake. And there's Torah not Lishma, which means Torah for our sake, which reflects these two elements of Torah. Torah as it relates to us, Mikora, Ki Ovid Ina Shadaita Denafsha Ovid. Initially, when a person begins serving, he serves the Daita Denafshi, what the benefit to him, what's the benefit? That he should reveal godliness within himself. And then comes the second level, which is that L'Shem HaTorah, that in order to bring godliness into the Torah. Those are the two dimensions. Now, how it reflects in our daily service, it works like this. When you wake up, the soul is in an initial concealed state. So you begin by learning. This learning is meant to like a warm-up, to ignite, to wake up. So this Torah is before the tefillah, before davening. This is in order to wake us up, which is definitely mikara and adaita denafsha. This then leads somebody, once the warm-up is there, to davening, where davening, it's called fans the flames of the soul in Ava V'yira. And this in turn leads to the next stage of Torah after davening. What does that contribute? What's the Torah after davening do that tefillah doesn't do? So he said two things. Tefillah on its own is rotzeh. It's a yearning. It's running. A search, a seek. It's not shuv. It's not integrated and settled in, which is the Torah after davening. So more integrated. The second thing is tefillah on its own, because it's related to contemplating and climbing as best as we can. At the end of the day, it's always connected to existence, as high as you go. And because it's connected to existence, it ultimately, even the haflah, even the hasbananus, the contemplation, that in prayer, that leads to understanding the grandeur of God, which is beyond what we can relate to directly in a comprehended form, that too is still related to existence, because in Atzmos, to get a real taste of the etzem, of the essence, that cannot be done through contemplation, because it's beyond that all. That has to come as a gift. This has to come as a gift. Yeah. That has to come as a gift. And he explained, and it says, Keren refers to Atzem, that Yoram, he raised the glory to his nation, which is, he said that is not part of the Isbaranus. That's a result of. The contemplation is on the first half. The two interpretations. Either that even Seviv is only Shmai, only a reflection, or that even the reflection is also above everything. But they're talking about reflection. But Vayoram Kalam is the matana that comes, Torah mitzvahs that comes as a result of our effort. Like we learned before, it cannot be given directly, it cannot be earned directly, it has to happen through a gift. Okay. And because it comes as a gift, a second. And this gift allows us to connect to the divine core and essence, which prayer does not do. Okay. And this is the second level. And this is the second level of Torah, Torah Lishma, where the goal is to learn in a way that you're mamshech Ein Sof in Torah. Just a second, please. Let me finish the summary. Then you can ask any question you like. So he explains, the difference between the two types of learning Torah, the first one level is to quench a thirst. whether it's in the beginning in the morning, where you begin, where there it's awakening, it's not quenching a thirst, it's awakening, that's also for your function, not for the sake of Torah, the sake of the person. Or even learning Torah after davening to quench the thirst is also for a purpose, to quench his thirst. But then there's the higher level of Torah, and that...
Is it the same thing? Like before davening?
No, it's not. It's two different levels. But there's also after davening you can have something that's still for the sake of the person, not for the sake of Torah. And then there's the Torah not to quench any thirst. The whole purpose of it is simply to draw down the etzem, elikus, down below. Like we say, Ezu chassid. Who's the true chassid? Am is chassidim kene. He does chesed not for his own sake, but he does chesed with God, with his nest, so to speak, with his source. And this we can say is what David did. David was able to connect Kodesh with Torah. That means he studied Torah in a way that connecting God into Torah. And that's the higher level of limud Torah. And that's what we're up to, and we're going to continue now. If you have any questions, please.
Do we call the first level of learning? The first level of learning when he's
What's the question?
when it describes two levels of learning seem to be a higher level, both seem to be Lishmo. We divide that into two smaller divisions. Second division, what you described, there was he's not able to contemplate a high level. All his contemplation is limited by existence, but the result is these mamshik something like the lower level was that the hamshach is commensurate to his
I'm not. It's confusing me. It's very simple. There's Torah, but we learn for our sake, for benefiting us, or there's Torah for the sake of Torah itself.
Yes.
That's the key difference.
Yes.
So what's the question?
Now there's two levels. We say the five persons. Avi the nafshe does to himself, commensurate what he needs to wake himself up in the morning. Then we said there's
Or to quench his thirst, or whatever it may be, if it's for the purpose of the person,
the second level when he's learning
for the sake of Torah itself.
The second level he learns after davening is quench his thirst. We still call it the quench his thirst, and that's not what Shmuel at all.
That's because there's two types. If anything that serves you is not l'shma, l'shem Torah. There's many ways that can be.
Be a combination.
Doesn't speak about combination yet. After davening, yes, you could have one level that is for quenching the thirst that was created by tefillah. That's also for your sake, and then there's a higher level for the sake of Torah itself, of bringing down a core experience. Prayer itself does not bring down the core experience. That needs a gift. Prayer is a service from below. It's our effort. So it's as far as we can go with our effort.
Is that why we pray when we want to change something physically in the world?
You mean like a refuah shlema?
You said no matter what we do, prayer relates to the physical.
For existence.
Right. So is that why, in other words, when someone's sick, we say Tehillim, we don't say usually go out and do a mitzvah.
You could do a mitzvah for someone's merit too. The prayer, it's prayer, the whole halacha of prayer is that you pray when you have a need. According to the Torah, the only time you need to pray really is when you're in need. The Chachamim, the Chazal, decree that we pray even when there's no need. Huh?
Why do we specifically do prayer? Why not do something? Why not? They usually say learn Torah when you have a need.
I don't know if it's related to the discussion here, but you can connect it if you like. I don't see it necessarily part of this. But prayer
is rooted down here.
You could learn Torah in honor of someone. No one said you can't. I don't know if it's exclusively what you're saying is correct.
Even if you learn Torah for somebody, there'd be a prayer connected. You say, God, I'm doing this to so and so. He should have a refuah shlema. So that itself is a prayer. It's a question.
But it's a different discussion. I don't necessarily related to this.
This prayer is rooted here, as opposed to.
I don't know. I mean, Torah, there's also Torah that relates to existence. We just said there's a level of Torah that you study for the purpose of sake of a person. So I don't know if that's the explanation for that. I mean, it's a whole different discussion.
We said the David Melech learned.
Okay, let's continue.
David Melech was learning, and he is praising Hashem, we said there's also a idea of Zmiros cutting away
The weeds.
the weeds. Now, did David never have in mind that he would push away his enemies with Gashmas?
That's what we learned, yeah.
The Gashmas Kashita. Taking those
He-
Gashmas.
He believed that when you connect to Torah, yes, you're able to, it's called starve, or what do you call it, deprive the supply lines, cut off the supply lines of the negative forces. Anyone that believes, that is a Torah person believes that. What's unique? I mean, that's Moshe Rabbeinu, everyone. You connect to God. It's one of the ways that you get rid of the klippas. Kedusha eliminates klippa. What's the question?
Difficulties at home, difficulties making with your mortgage, difficulties with.
No, there's no magic tricks. There's no magic tricks. You have to do what you have to do.
You're taking these influences.
I don't know. Klippas goes in the category of mortgage payments. I mean,
They're coming after.
here he's talking about klippas, meaning real forces of evil that are attacking things that are holy. Hitlers. You're talking about Amaleks. You're talking about enemies. No, it's physical or spiritual. It doesn't matter. I mean, if a person is reckless and can't pay their mortgage, I don't know if learning Torah is going to make the difference. There's a thing called being responsible,
No, if somebody got laid off from a job or something, I mean.
Yeah.
So what? Is laid off from a job means the category of sitra, achra, and klippas? Where'd you get that from? Maybe it means that you need another job.
It could mean that you're going.
I mean, you have to be.
Problems of everyday life.
It doesn't have to mean that.
Let's start with what the definition of klippas, sitra, achra is talking about things that are anti-God. That doesn't mean if you fail in something that's a klippa, sitra, achra. Failure can come from many reasons. Failure can come due to a person's negligence, due to a person's many things. There's a thing called mazel. I mean, why are we bringing that in here? It's confusing enough. Why do you have to bring in? David HaMelech was dealing with real enemies. He was running for his life. He had a difficult life. He had many challenges.
We don't run into such difficulties.
What is your question? I'm not clear.
In other words, the kind of difficulties we usually run into is your children aren't at sleep in school, you can't pay your bills, you don't get along with your wife. I mean, these are
Most of them are man-made difficulties that could probably be resolved without all these holy interactions, I would suggest.
That's what I'm asking.
Yes, that's number one. Yes, in most cases, if someone's, let's say, unhealthy, and they think they're going to go learn Torah, it's going to help them, they should go to a doctor or a therapist and get themselves treated. That's the number. That's what the Torah says.
True.
Now, if objectively a person has tried everything, obviously, but to run to, this is not how I would define the aritzim, let's put it this way, the weeds in our lives. The weeds in our lives are far more our own fears, our own inhibitions, our own psychological inner challenges. We all have the same klippas today.
That's exactly.
Yeah, I would not call them circumstantial issues. They're more the internal forces that impede you from being healthy and being godly. And they're usually not outside circumstances.
How about the Muslim encroachment in the world?
I don't know what that means exactly. You're talking very broad terms. You're talking about the threat to Israel?
Threat here, threat there.
I don't know.
What do you do about
To
terror?
all Western civilizations.
I mean, what are you asking? What to do about it?
What do we do when we learn Torah? We have this idea of smiros. We're going to cut away the bad, the top, the bottom. We're going to take away their power. We're going to turn on the light.
I'll tell you what I'm having a difficulty with. What I find, I'm almost like allergic to this at this point. When religious people, quote unquote religious people, use religion, they think that by doing religious things they're going to cut off the enemies. To me, they have to first look at themselves, whether they are godly vessels.
You're putting us all in the same cliche.
No, I'm not saying you necessarily.
Cliche. So we want to.
But this is a big. But what you're voicing sounds to me very much like a bunch of from people getting together, Meir Sharim, and we're going to daven that all the Zionists should die,
I don't live in Meir Sharim.
or that all the Muslims should die, for that matter. Doesn't matter. But so my question is simply: you have to look. I wonder if you're asking your question. I wonder in your life, what are you doing to get rid of your anti-God forces? That's all that matters here.
If you want to take on that on the side, we can take that on the side. But it's still a question of...
That's all that matters, frankly, because all that God wants is you to be you. He's not asking you to solve the Muslim problem. You have to do your part.
Exactly. So in other words, are you making the statement that our learning Torah, the Zmiris, etc., doesn't make an impact in that kind of scenario?
I'm making the statement like the Rambam says, every act can change the world. But if you have to if you focus on your acts, you focus on your life, what can I do to be a godlier person, to have shalom in my life? Because that has a ripple effect on the bigger world. If you have direct contact to Muslim leaders or to other political leaders where you can influence them, great. But if you don't, you can do something every morning and every day, not to be a mechanical Jew, not to do things automatically, to actually do what he's saying here. Here comes to become a godlier person. And this comes with hard work. You're suggesting just because we live in free times, that doesn't mean there's no hard Aveda. As a matter of fact, today it's far harder than it was once. Because then once we were challenged from the outside. Now, it's very easy to be complacent. I think the biggest enemy is complacency.
It's the Rebbe's biggest enemy, I think, complacency.
Yeah, so complacency, which means us being more godlier human beings, which is a constant struggle and a constant effort. If you want to apply the ideas of this into our lives. So, yes, there's the aspect of waking up in the morning and asking yourself how spiritually awake you are, and using the tools of Torah, Tefillah, and then Torah to grow. And you need an objective person to tell you whether you are or you're not. You should not be your own arbiter in these matters, because it's very easy to make ourselves feel comfortable. You have to have someone else who you're accountable to, a mashpia, a rav, who says to you, you know what, you're not doing the most you could do, and you have a lot more potential, and you're being lazy, and so on. And I think if every one of us makes that shift, it's a ripple effect. You make a little shift in your life, that's what Judaism teaches. That's a real shift. Not the same mechanical thing that creates a shift in existence. If you don't make the shift, you're not doing anything. It doesn't matter how big your vision may be. It all comes down to shifts we make. Real shift, what he says in Tanya Perik Tezvav. Real avodah. Whatever you're accustomed to, if you're just doing that, then you're going to get the same results. You want change, you have to create change. Changes can be in a microcosm. So you want to know how to affect the supply lines of the klippus in the world? You figure out in your microcosm how you do it in your life. That's my response.
Across the board, all physical materials, psychological, spiritual.
Everyone has its own battles. I'm not suggesting you press a button. Mm-hmm. I think, again, the key thing is what you're going to do. What are you going to do today? Are you going to do something different than you did yesterday? Better. There'll be a shift in your consciousness, in your routines, in your nature, or you're going to do as much as you did till now. You're going to push yourself a little more. That to me, that's what it really comes down to if you want to really make it practical. Everything else becomes theoretical to me, because I don't see how people make changes if they don't do them step by step. Big changes don't happen. Small changes, small shifts. Which means the same situation you were in yesterday, you deal with differently, in a more refined way, you know you've made a shift. And you need an objective person to tell you that's the case, because it's very easy to convince yourself that you think you're doing it and then you're not. This alone is not what I just said, is not easy effort. You don't need to learn Ayin Beis, what I just said. Ayin Beis goes a lot further, obviously, but if you want to apply this, that's how I would apply it. One application. So we have both elements of learning Torah. They learn Torah for the sake of your soul, and then there's learning for the sake of Torah itself. I think you could ask the question, how is it relevant the sake of Torah itself? We haven't even gotten to learning the sake of for ourselves.
What does that mean anyway?
We just learned the whole chapter here about it. Huh? It does. I explained it at length. You could always listen to it. I went through this the whole week. It's a whole bunch of classes on this. Well, I mean, you give the example after example. You're not thinking about yourself. If you are dedicated to what the master wants, and you're just dedicated to what he wants, not about you. Now, most people don't have that capacity yet, because their self-interest is there. So people serve God. That's why we're happy. If you serve God, even if it's self-interest, fine, at least you're serving. But to serve God, not for self-interest, is a level to reach. Again, this is relative. This is all relative. Generally speaking, serving God for your own sake is usually more on your terms. It's a little more in your comfort zone. Serving God for God's sake is more getting out of your comfort zone.
My question was,
yeah.
What's the Torah getting out of it?
Well, the Torah is getting connected more to God. It's bringing God into existence. It's like saying for God. You're doing it for God, for Torah. Okay? Any questions? Further questions?
So what happened when the Torah is getting connected more to God? What happened to the Torah?
It gets elevated. What do you mean?
Has a reader. It has a tremendous reader. When it gets more connected to God, it's not.
Well, it says the Torah. Before he said the Torah comes down into Chachma. Chachma is wisdom, is already a limited state. That's why it's Iskashrus. It says Chachma is not Ratzon. So the Torah gets elevated, and in turn we get elevated. Look, Simchas Torah, which is the Maimorim. This is Maimorim based on Torah Tziva of Simchas Torah of the Alter Rebbe. That the Alter Rebbe said in Tov Kuf Ayin Zayin, which would be...
Ayin Zayin.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Tov Kuf Samach Zayin. Tov Kuf Samach Zayin would be a little more than 200 years ago, 200 and to be exact, 600 years ago. So he spoke, when a Jew dances with the Torah, Simchas Torah, you're lifting the Torah. So what are you doing to the Torah? It means what Torah needs you to lift it? It's correct, the Torah needs lifting. We all need lifting. We lift the Torah, and in turn the Torah lifts us. Yeah.
That's not Lishmo.
Why not? What's the Shem HaTorah?
If I'm lifting the Torah in order to be, the Torah should lift me, even that statement is, you know people that are on that you consider besides that level, of course.
All of us can be on that, yes, it's all relative. You can see when you're doing something, there's two ways, as I just said. You can do it because it's in your comfort zone. That's usually when it's for your own sake. If you go out of your comfort zone, you do it because that's what we were told to do, that's usually a sign that it's for a higher purpose than yourself. That'd be a very practical application of it. Very simple. Someone gives tzedakah, let's say, they're accustomed to giving this much, but they're going to give more, push themselves till it hurts. Why? They're not gaining, because that's what God wants. That's in a subtle way. It's not that crazy, by the way. You don't have to jump into heavens to think of it. You have to think of it. If you want to practically apply this, you have to look at your own level. Now, obviously, the Rebbe Rashab is also talking to people on a far, far higher level than us. But I'm talking about us. How does it apply? It applies. We all have things we do that are more for our sake, and things that we do. Even Shabbos, Kashrus, Tefillah, things like that. Tzemach Tzedek was once going to davening, and because he was rushing, so he usually would give tzedakah. Yoav pruta la'ani v'hader matla. It says you give a pruta to a poor person, and then you go and pray. Because he was rushing to the minyan, he said he'll give tzedakah afterwards. So that time he davened, he didn't have the vision that he usually had, the connection to the Alter Rebbe that he usually had. So he realized, because he forgot to do that. So you see, there he was davening, and subtly in his level, it was more for his sake. Had he was thinking what's good for God, he would have done that. So even in Yiddishkeit, you can be doing things that you're accustomed to. You do your Shabbos. Every Shabbos, if you would think, what's in it for God? Trust me, your Shabbos will be different than last Shabbos. And I challenge most from Jews, they'll show you that their Shabbos are very similar one to the next. The same routines. They know when to shut the light in their refrigerator. The chant is made. The table is set. You go to shul, sing the same songs, and next week comes. So if you're a person who learned a little chassidus, you say, what was Shabbos different this week than last week? So most of the sense, Beruchnius is different. I rely on God. But that's not an Aveda. Aveda means your Shabbos is be different by not just doing it what I'm accustomed to. Let me do something a little different. Why would you do something different? Because you're thinking about God, not just about yourself. That's so complicated? Why is that complicated?
I don't think it's actually like...
What? Was this not understood?
His vision, enjoy his vision. He himself wasn't get a vision that he wanted.
Forget about the story. In our personal lives, how many things are you doing? You're a frum Jew. How many things you're doing in your comfort zone doesn't take any effort for your part? Because it's already, you're comfortable with it. Huh?
I mean, what you're saying is...
It means thinking always...
You do every day...
Every second.
Right, the day before.
And why would you do that? You'd only do that because it's for God. Because if not, I'm comfortable as a Jew as I am right now. Why would I have to be bothered with Mashiach and other things? But because if you're comfortable...
I mean, what do you do?
No, listen.
20 minutes longer each day? You do,
Hundreds of different ways. I could give you 100 examples. Yes, you do an extra mitzvah, extra tzedakah, whatever. Hard? Of course it's hard. That's why we're here on earth. But the thing shouldn't be easy. Now, usually what happens is people are shaken up when things aren't working. their parnasa is not going so well, health, God forbid, other things, then they say, I got to do something different. But when things are going well, why? Because it's for your sake. Because you're doing it for your sake. Your sake, things are going well. Why should I change something? So that's what he says here. No, learn Torah L'Shma for Torah's sake, not for your sake. For your sake, you wouldn't change anything. But for God, God wants more than that. That's an example of using the second level in personal way. To me, it's as basic as it gets.
If somebody's, God forbid, sick and he takes on something else, he's not doing it L'Shma, though. I mean, that's not L'Shma.
Okay, you're busy in your mind. You're not listening to what I'm saying. You're busy in your mind, mathematical. I just gave you an example. We do things every day mechanically because we're comfortable. And if you thought about God, you would do more. You wouldn't have to wait for something to be deprived. Does that not make sense to you?
That makes sense.
That's what I've been saying till now. Why would you go more out of your way? Yeah, and it's true. If you're doing it because you're needing something, then again it's for you. But what happens if you're doing that because you need something? I've been saying that last 15 minutes.
The Rebbe's Meirah Tzitzav.
What you guys are doing is not thinking practically. You're going back to books and quoting things.
Yeah.
Why don't you just think practically? Do you think you're serving God or you're serving yourself?
It addresses that.
Okay, so there's the challenge. Maybe it's time to think about God a little.
It addresses
I'm
that
serving
question
God
directly.
for the benefit of myself. I don't think it's very long for me to get out of it. Benefit of my family, benefit of this.
Okay. You know, do you understand the concept of somebody seeing someone in need and they're thinking, you know what, I have to go here because I have responsibilities, but I'm going to go now and help this person, though I gain nothing from it. Why would someone do that? Because that's what God wants you to do. Because it's not about you. It's not all about me.
Even the person gains something.
So you want to go now into philosophical, maybe there's also, I'm gaining the satisfaction that I'm doing something I don't want. That's another discussion. I'm talking relative to where you are, do that. Let's start with that. Then you get to higher levels. See, to me, the problem is, if it's out of Veda doing what you have to do, you're not going to get to any higher levels. You want to understand conceptually something when you're not even doing the first step. If we can't get out of our own comfort zone, then you're definitely not going to get deeper. The point is to be able to get beyond ourselves. There's no way to experience these things without getting beyond ourselves.
Don't we always do both? I mean, at our level.
No, I think most people are driven by self-interest and they stick to it until they're forced to be uncomfortable. Most people, the status quo is their preference. Why would someone change anything?
Well,
If everything's going well, why would someone change anything? Tell me.
I mean, even if somebody does reach, if they do an act that's for the benefit of somebody else at your own expense, let's say, for instance, even that act itself is going to encompass both of these aspects.
Okay, so I'm saying to you, so you know what? Do that, and I guarantee you that you do that enough, and keep doing that, you'll suddenly realize there's even more levels.
Yeah, so when the doctor was saying, I do it for the benefit of my family, even that's a very high level. That's the point of making.
Well, that's why you have to find it.
We'd be depressed because we can never completely get rid of our own self-interest in any act that we do. We're always going to get
Depressed is not the word here that I would use. I would be called motivated and challenged. I think it comes down to simply, if you can apply on a consistent basis not to be a mechanical Jew and to constantly push yourself, that you then become elevated to a place where then you can realize even deeper levels of selflessness. You can't jump 10 steps in selflessness. First you have to begin with a selflessness that's relative to your selfishness. Do something a little more. As a person grows, it's like containers. It would be like you're studying something. Someone say, you know what? I want to understand the whole I am Bays standing on one foot. I'd say impossible. Study as much as you could. Try to break your head. Force yourself to get it. And as you expand your containers, you'll start getting more things as you go. It's like climbing a mountain. You can't climb to the top of the mountain without climbing 5 steps. So I think that's why you have to get out of their heads. You see, people learning Chassidus has to be understood as a exercise, as real action. I think the problem is, and I say it many times, and I think the problem is, people learning Chassidus like you're learning Shulchan Aruch. They want to master the ideas. And Chassidus is not about mastering ideas. Chassidus is about climbing a mountain. And if you're not ready to climb, you're not going to really master the ideas. That's the bottom line truth. The doors will be locked for someone who's not ready to climb. As smart as they are. I've looked through this my whole life. And you can get certain things, but you really don't get it until you actually... It's like someone reading about swimming and never jumping into the water. Tell me. Can you ever really learn to swim if you don't jump into the water, no matter how many books you read about the art of swimming? Or for that matter, this is even deeper than swimming. It's not just swimming. This is spiritual growth. As I said, most of us are by Asiyah Ruchnius. And here we're talking about Yitzira and Bria and Atzilus and Akudim, Ak, Lifnei Atzimtzum. For most people, it's just words. Climb to Asiyah Ruchnius, and then you'll start understanding a little more about the next levels. There's no way around it. There's only through Aveda that you can really enter the doors. I don't see, not only I don't see, I think it's impossible. So you can learn, you can be, let's say, you can climb the mountain, let's say 5 inches, and you can learn about what's going on 10 inches above. But then you got to go. If you don't, you maybe get 5 inches more. You're not going to get much more than that. Does that make sense to you?
That's what they call the difference between Bali Good and Bali Haskalah.
You could say that. Yeah, real Haskalah would be someone who has a great mind and can get it. They can get what I just said as well. Listen, you can get the idea that I can't swim unless I swim, and they could understand that too. That still doesn't mean you can swim. So good maskil. So yeah, Haskalah without a Veda really is not possible, in my opinion. It's not possible. Because it's just, you can't, as I said, we can show you let's say you're on the first step, the first ledge of the mountain. So you see a certain horizon. You can be shown another maybe ledge, but not much more. Even if someone talks to you about the top of the mountain, you're not really. Think about it. You climbed. Let's say you started your life down on the ground in a valley, right? You climb now to the first ledge. So you have a little perspective. Chassidus gives you a little bigger perspective. You're told about the next ledge. Okay, I see there's a perspective beyond me. You can extrapolate and visualize what would it look like, the horizon, if the horizon today is broader than it was yesterday. So I can visualize that in a little while, I climb higher, I'll see it more. You can imagine it, but that's still imagination. How far does your imagination go? Only to a certain extent. At some point, you're going to have to climb to the next ledge to get a broader horizon. Then you can visualize and say, I see now what I see. There's a whole other level to see. I'll give you a perfect example. You remember when you were 5 years old? The things you did not know today, that you know today, you didn't know then. Impossible to know then. Right? Impossible. Just impossible. Nobody could have told it to you. Whatever they would have been told, you're just not capable, at a 5-year-old, to understand certain things. Then you came 10 years old, 15. If you're able to document it all. Some things can't change unless you actually grow into that age where you're capable. Same thing as once you hit 30, 40, 50, in Ruchnius, most of us stop growing. But think of that you're still 5 years old in the level of spirituality. And that's why you can't really get to the next levels. Even if you gave a 5-year-old to read about Ak, what would he come to? Even if he was able to read, it would be something outside of his league. Today we can talk about it because we already have some semblance of what's beyond time and space, some spirituality, higher worlds. So we talk about it. But the truth is, to enter, really appreciate it, you have to climb. Now, that doesn't mean you can't, as I said, that doesn't mean someone can't tell you the story of what they see on higher levels. That's what the Rebbe Rashab is doing. But for you to relate to it, really relate to it, you have to, at least on your level, your microcosm, climb. You don't have to climb like the Rebbe Rashab climbed. In your own little world, you have to be able to climb a little more, or else your mind will not contain, you'll still be the 5-year-old. Now, at what pace? Everybody at their pace. There's no pressure. That's why I don't think there's no generic model here. You are in your place, I'm my way. Every one of us, we have to look where we are and see what can I do to move it a little. And that's why I said you need someone to help you with it, because here we're speaking very generally. I don't know everybody's situation. You have to look at your life, your challenges, where you find difficulty to do something different. Fear, habit. We're creatures of habit. There's all kinds of different things that stop us. So that's how we have to look at it. That's how I would explain it in the broad sense of the word. Does this not make sense? Now maybe when you look at this, people don't talk about it. They talk about all the high levels. We're talking about very, very high levels here. And we continue learning it. In truth, as I said many times, if you really wanted to get there, we probably shouldn't continue learning it and probably go back and just say, okay, let's just do the steps I could do. Here, this is relentless, because By the time we're ready by chapter 177, have we climbed 176 steps? So we haven't. But we're learning it because, first of all, I'm continuing to teach it, and I'm not saying by no means that I am on these levels, but it definitely forces me to get out of my comfort zone, and at least we're trying to get the picture how it is. But you're not going to get the full experience without any effort. It's just not possible. So we talk about Ak. Ak is the picture, the snapshot. We're talking about Torah on that level, the Shema. The way Rebbe Rashab talks it's beyond most of us. But it doesn't mean that it's beyond you relatively to your level. You can find a place. All this can be applied. If I was teaching this in a hands-on workshop manner, I would go through everybody in the room, and we'd all come up with exercises. Where do you stand in your life? How do you apply this? That's how this would be done. We've talked about this many times. That's a whole different, that's a workshop. This is a class. Here we're learning the ideas for posterity, just to get them down on paper, just to convey it, and so on. The work we don't really do here. We're not doing work in this class, right? Am I communicating, or something lost? What do you think?
I got a little bit.
Is this radically different than you understand?
I'm trying to understand.
But you understand that when you look at this, you could be shown a picture of like what it looks like from the top of the mountain. That doesn't mean we're on top of the mountain. It just means we're shown a picture, which frankly is exciting too. At least someone's telling us what it looks like. But to say if you really want to get what it looks like, really want to apply it, you need to do something to get there.
You can apply it 24/7, anything you do. You're not saying only davening.
100%, absolutely, 24/7. Whether we can be on call 24/7 and be such a sense of urgency, most of us are not wired that way. I would say if you can just do this once a day, or when you davening, who davens properly? Do you know anyone that davens properly? It's all mechanical. It's lip service. You go davening, they knock it off in 20 minutes. You say it all, weiter. You enter amens and so on. And davening was always a big issue for me for that reason. I couldn't relate to I couldn't relate to that. I could relate completely if everyone davened for 4 hours. That I would have no problem with. But then you'd have to have people who are ready to do that. Instead, that I could relate to. We're going on a journey now, and it's important. But how many people think it's so important to give up 3 hours in their day, or an hour for that matter? I wish they taught us to daven like that when we were bochrim, kids. That would be something. At least you'd know what it was like, and then you could yearn for it. I don't have time to do it. It's a big sad thing to me that davening is still it's completely lost art. It's a complete mechanical thing. I'm not saying it means nothing. God hears our words and He hears our hearts and so on. Forget about that. Prayer without kavanah is like a body without a soul. That's another story. But let's say God has rachmanas on us, His children. You're reading at least,
The first two blocks of Shema Esrei and Shema. That's the start for me.
No. That's why my suggestion is okay. Listen, take one prayer every day, Shema or Moidani or something, and do what you could with it. 100%. I think what I said now is very important, actually, in the learning of Chassidus. To me, this is a very important introduction to Chassidus. Chassidus is a journey to another place, but more than a journey, it's something to mean He wants you to come there, not just to read about it. It's one thing to read about higher worlds. Another thing is to travel there. So you can read about it, which is great, you get a taste. I'm not saying it's not great to hear. But to really appreciate it, to understand it, you have to get it, you have to do something. Some effort has to be made. I think there's Torah Lishma and Torah for your own sake. Look, for many of us, even opening up to learn Torah altogether is a chiddush. We're busy with ourselves completely. You're talking about self-interest. We're not even talking about learning Torah for self. We're busy with self-interest without Torah. So even learning Torah is already, that's for self-interest, is already a nice thing to do. Because you're saying, because someone says self-interest, why should I spend an hour learning Torah? even for my own benefit, I can spend an hour, make $1,000, make $1 million. So many people can answer. So mere thank to me that you feel that Torah is for your sake is also good. That means it's already, for some people, that's already Torah Lishma, compared to the non-Lishma of their lives, that is. But I am Beis, Chassidus goes deeper, that itself, in Torah itself, is Lishma and Shalei Lishma. So really, that's how we have to look at it.
Right. That was what he was, I think that's what he was asking, like, when he does it, you do more, each day you do more, but there's always some level of it that's for your own benefit. So therefore, have you really reached anything? Have you reached these levels that we're talking about?
Well, that's why I would say that if somebody, for example, gives tzedakah because they're going to get honored, and they'll be respected for it, and they'll have more connections and network, and God will give them more, or because that they'll meet bigger millionaires to get more business. It's better because there's some people whose self-interest doesn't even dictate that.
Right.
So they've already, at least they're connected their self-interest to something that is positive.
There's always both levels and everything.
Yeah, but there are levels as you climb. There is an element of doing something that completely has no direct benefit to you. And I can guarantee that you can find examples of it in your life. I'm sure of it. And look, Richard Dawkins and the radical atheist will tell you, he wrote a book called The Selfish Gene. He will say that even the most selfless act of someone giving their life, what we would call Mesiras Nefesh, he would call ultimate selfishness, because your selfishness has pleasure in giving your life. So of course you can make an argument like that. But Torah Chassidus makes another argument that really we are part of God, and there are states of being that you could do something that's completely not for you and completely for a higher purpose. No, he's a rare non-Jewish atheist.
He's right.
He's a rare specimen.
He's right. You learned the first chapter of time.
No, I understand. Okay, well, as I said, depends. Like which side of the family, right? You know that one?
No.
Lucy comes home, and she's studying biology, origin of the species, and she asks her mother, "Where do we come from?" So her mother very proudly sits down, beaming, says, "We had a grandmother from Poland, a grandfather from Czechoslovakia. A few generations back, we had a great grandfather who wrote a great book on halacha." We go back, the further back we go, the better it gets. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, Adam and Eve, the Garden of Eden. Let's go up. Then she goes to her dad, and she says, "Where do we come from?" And he's like all disturbed. He says, "Oh yeah, I was always waiting for this fateful day. I was always afraid of this fateful day." He sits her down and says, "Well, brace yourself. We first come millions of years ago from apes. And before that, amphibians. And before that, one-celled bacteria. As far back as we can go, we know it was a ball of gas." So she's like really disturbed, and she goes back to her mother and says, "I don't understand. You told me one thing, Dad told me another." She said, "We're both telling you the truth. He told you about his side of the family, and I'm telling you about my side of the family." So I always say this. I say this is the ultimate, heard it here first, the ultimate resolution between creationism and Darwinism, whatever, and evolution. Simple. Depends which side of the family. The Rebbe once said this by Farbrengen. He said there was Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av, he says, was an opportunity to talk to the teacher about things that were not Torah, because they're not supposed to study. Even though they said they once went in and they saw him studying Torah, so he told them, if they're going to shmeiss me, if they're going to punish me above, let them punish me for learning Torah on Tisha B'Av. But on Tisha B'Av, so they said, we were able to talk about things we read and so on, worldly things. So I once said to him, I read that there are people who believe that humans come from apes. The Rebbe said to his teacher, he was a kid, the Rebbe was a little child. So he said, Mendel, the teacher said, Mendel, what does it bother you if they want to think that that's where they come from? Let them think that. Yeah. Yes, the point is, I think, by the way, the story is not just a joke. It's true. We choose our destinies. The fact that the Torah says that a human being is off from an Adama, we're dust from the ground, and imbued us with a soul. So someone asks you, who are you? You could say, I'm dust, or I'm a soul. It's a very big difference. I just heard a great story. Segel is a Segel in Israel. Segel, Yassel. There's one who is given a Sachan Miftat film. He's related to Pinto Greenberg, a brother, yeah. So anyway, he went to put on film with someone in the 60s. The Rebbe was calling to put on tefillin. So the guy was not just a vegetarian; he was a vegan. They don't even eat eggs. So he says to him, tefillin. Look, he looked at his shoes. I said, I wear shoes of linen. I'm not going to put on leather from an animal on my. So he wrote to the Rebbe. The Rebbe answer is unbelievable. You know the Rebbe answered him? He said, tell him that halacha, according to Jewish law, tefillin can be made even from a nevela. Tefillin can be made even from a dead animal, a carcass that just dies, that you didn't kill. He says, so imagine, tell him like this. So the carcass is lying on the ground. If you ask the carcass, what would you rather? To be eaten by the flies and by the vultures, or to be lying on the head of a Jew and making a blessing to God, binding your mind to God? What do you think the carcass would choose? And the guy put on tefillin. No, but the Rebbe used his sensitivity because he's sensitive. He doesn't want to. So he said, which one is better for? Good, huh? Yeah, that's a good one. I heard a few very good stories. Shabbos, unbelievable. Yeah, someone told me. I'll tell you another one. When Adara Torah was founded, also I'm Gleblach. So the Adara Torah was founded by Rabbi Jacobson. And there was not no relation. Rabbi Pliskin, Abba Pliskin was teaching there. Rabbi Shalom Ber Veshetsky, his son-in-law, was teaching there. So one night, a guy comes out of Yechidus in the 60s, and he's pale. He just came out of the Rebbe, and he sees Shalom Ber Veshetsky. Shalom says, "What's the matter?" He says, "I can't speak even. What just happened is just completely." So they go on the bench across the street in Eastern Park. He says, "Tell me." He says, "I was by the Rebbe. And unwittingly, I said to the Rebbe, there are people who have complaints about Adara Torah. Because a lot of hippies, they said, "Mi brengt mishkev zocher nixta." That's what they said. They're bringing, and today we call gays. Yeah. Mishkev zocher nixta. Not a student. I don't know who it was. It was a Lubavitcher. Wow. They told the Rebbe, "Sudat Tainis." The Rebbe stood up. Like this. The Rebbe stood up. Like this. Stood by the table like this. He says, "Avem eretmendas." He says, "Meitzi yoker min hazel." And the guy could not stand it, so he left the room. The Rebbe said, The Rebbe said, "And who are they saying this? People." You know, the Rebbe was in other words, he founded the Hadarat. And who are they saying this? He says, mention it Aiden. He says, we're taking yoker, the precious, from the. We're freeing the. I say yotze. You're extracting the precious, the beauty from the. What's the zeil? How do you say zeil? From the from the profane. The guy could not stand, so he ran out of the Rebbe's room. Because he said the Rebbe, saying, "V'avem eretmendas." No, you're talking about me. And so he asked Rusetsky what to do. Rusetsky said, "You write a letter to the Rebbe, ask Mechila. That's what you have to do, because you didn't mean it, but you came across like you're criticizing the Rebbe doing this. He didn't mean it that way. He just meant people are talking. He didn't realize."
Put on that shape, son.
No,
Write a letter.
no, Rusetsky. Interesting letter, huh?
Give us the look.
Yeah.
Maybe you saw the letter?
What letter?
It was actually.
No, I don't know. I know the story. Someone told me the story.
Always have the story.
Yeah, he was talking about the 60s.
I just told the other story
Vegan.
about the film. There's more stories. You want to hear one more? I heard this when I spoke by the shluchim. I mean, it's just unrelated. There was a guy that his son left Yiddishkeit, so he was by the Rebbe. So he was crying to the Rebbe about it. He said to the Rebbe, "But there's an expression in America. They say an apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So I'm concerned that the tree, meaning myself, I'm the cause, basically." So the Rebbe said to him, that's true, the expression is true, an apple doesn't fall far from the tree, but only when it's a ruach mitsuya, when it's a regular wind. But taint blasen, today they're blowing berucha she'enim mitzuyas, unnatural winds. So it's a different story. Interesting answer, huh? Mededik. So the Rebbe said.
His son went away.
It's just a whole approach to life. What do you think about that? Today, the Rebbe said today they're blowing other winds. Now, the Rebbe's explanation is in the Marshal Eich. Verstehst? To them alone come in the boy and you say this is a chinuch, right?
Der Rebbe writes in der Matzeva, wo der Friedrich Rebbe Schnas geoin oiz Yisrael ve'oi havoi. The Rebbe said what he is. He's a genius and understands how to love.
What was that? Can you try to say that again? Could you repeat that in English again?
That this is, you could repeat it better than me.
He writes it on which the
And the Matzeva of Friedrich Rebbe.
Ein Yisrael ve'ev.
Geoin oiz Yisrael ve'oi havoi.
It's what's written on the stone. Ge'ein is Yisrael. Ge'ein means Goin is a gun. What's a gun? A genius. Oiz Yisrael, the strength of Israel, the power of Israel, the might. Ve'oi and the lover, a lover of Israel, and a lover and his lover.
It's like you said, what Mitsuya, the Rebbe finds in everything.
Do we want to learn? So far we've been talking about the whole Arum.
Talking about right now.
No, we're talking about good. It's important Chassidus. But no, this is about Chassidus. This is how to learn Chassidus. You see, when it comes to Shulchan Aruch, Nigla, Shulchan Aruch, Halacha, or Gemara, there obviously there's a whole brilliance in it, and you need to use your mind. You can learn Lasukah, you can learn, even though it's not negate to Halacha, you can learn Gemara and just learn the theory behind Torah law, and there's something about that. Yagel Torah v'yadir. You're learning Torah and you're appreciating God's Torah. I'm not getting now the Shema, Shalei L'Shema, whatever the reasoning is. Actually, I should mention, you can learn, and you can learn without making a bracha, right? So you're learning like any science, an academic study, and that's why the Gemara says someone who doesn't make brachas HaTorah in Bab Mitzvah, right, is sof, he'll ultimately forsake the Torah. So in other words, you can learn Torah and forget the Noisen HaTorah. That would be an example of learning Torah. I have personal pleasure. I enjoy the academic, the scholarship, the mathematics, the brilliance of it. That's Shalei L'Shma. L'Shma would be, I'm learning because it's God's Torah. It could be for both reasons, but knowing that it's God's Torah means that there's a sanctity. It's not mine. I can't do whatever I want. I leave learning. I know I have to follow this because it's God's Torah. The first person is just learning because he wants enjoyment, goes and does whatever he wants. It's a purely academic exercise. So there's enough kamina between the Shema Shlev. It's not just a theoretical. You'll say the person who's learning it and knows also has pleasure or also appreciate. Yeah, but the bottom line is, but he also is foregoing some taivas that he wouldn't do, that he would have done had he not respected that it was God's Torah. So you can't say it's completely both selfish. You can't say it's equal selfishness. That's what I'm trying to say. Is it the ultimate? Of course not. The ultimate would be in that itself you can climb and learn even more Lishma. Lishma doesn't mean you don't have any pleasure in it. Lishma can mean you go beyond. For example, you can learn even though you're tired, you continue pushing yourself. Why would you push yourself? Because God's Torah, there are people who do that. They'll push themselves because that's what Hashem wants. I already finished my Quran. I already got my pleasure. I'm just giving there's examples. There's many examples where you can show how the Shema comes into place. But I wanted to say the difference between that and Chassidus. So Nikli, you have this type of thing, and then there's the halacha. Halacha means it dictates this is what you should do. In Chassidus, it's a far more subtle experience. So Chassidus, you're learning, first of all, you're learning about God directly. You're not learning about God's laws. You're not even learning about the logic of how the law applies, etc. You're learning a logic, but it's a logic of the spiritual worlds. And here, the demand is that you actually should change your consciousness. In Gemara, the goal is also that, but you can learn without never becoming a more spiritual person. You can just become a more brilliant person. But it doesn't mean you become more spiritual. Here, there's a real climbing of a mountain that's required. Like Gemara doesn't say anyway, learn Gemara, and that'll help you daven properly. Because two separate things. Gemara is God's wisdom, but Gemara is not telling you about God. It's not going to help you have Ava V'yira. You learn Chassidus, it teaches you what God is like, so you know I want more of it. So you're dealing in general with a study that is far more connected to the sublime, to spiritual growth, higher consciousness, more refinement, is directly connected.
2,500 years ago, they were all combined, right?
Yeah, that's why he said even now we're going to learn they're combined. But technically, you could learn Torah that connects to someone wants to know what are the laws of litigation. That's it. I don't care about... you could separate. Obviously, David's mistake was that he separated. You shouldn't separate, but you could. You could say, I'm focusing on Torah as it relates to how life should be lived. Pnimius Torah is focusing on Torah to understand what does God want. It's a very different focus. So that would be...
You live in Crown Heights, or you're out in the world too, but I find it so difficult to convince people. I'm not that I'm someone who can convince them, but they're even in my neighborhood, there's so many people who will just say that they do get spirituality from just learning Gemara, and they do get all this from that, and they do get your from it. And how do you combat that?
I wouldn't combat. I would just invite them to a Chassidus class that will stimulate them. It's like you can't. What could you say? First of all, there's no combat.
They feel insulted,
I wouldn't say this to anybody who's doing that, because I would just say, you like to learn Torah? Yeah. What happens if someone told them, you know what? I get stimulation from learning physics and mathematics. They'll say, come with me to Adaf Yom Mashiach, and you'll see a higher level. You have to just simply say to them, just because you read a book, 1 second.
The whole concept, why is there a Chabad in our neighborhood?
But David, let me just say something. My response to someone who says to me, I already get my pleasure from this book. Why are you giving me this book? The answer is anyone who likes to read a lot of books. So someone to say, I only want to learn one book and not another book, is not the sign of somebody who's really growing. And you think, and in the Nigla itself, and Gemara itself, you know how many books there are? Did they? So, I'm not getting into, now, ultimately the best is a person should taste it. I would not compel somebody. I wouldn't argue with them. I wouldn't tell them you're missing the boat. Some people get it and some people don't. And some people, when they learn it, they get it. And the fact is, some people gravitate more to... I'll be very honest. I think people who don't want to learn Chassidus or like to gravitate, Gemara doesn't make such demands of you as Chassidus does. Let's be honest. Gemara does not demand that you have to become a more refined and spiritually conscious person. It demands maybe to be more committed. You learn it. You want to do the mitzvahs, but it doesn't demand the same level of work. Have you ever studied Musar? People talk about it, but
I read Mesilas Yesharim.
Is Mesilas Yesharim Musar from Ramchal? Musar is a whole different discussion. Musar is officially what was established by what's his name? Sol Salant. Okay, so that's a different category of Musar. Cheves Alavov is also,
Cheves Alavov is in a different category.
Yeah. You have to define what Musar means. If you're talking about Musar, the modern Musar, you're talking about Musar of Rabbeinu Yeina is incorporated into Chassidus also. Chassidus incorporates Rabbeinu Yeina. Is Pirkei Avos Musar?
No.
So, it depends what you mean by Musar. You see, you're using the Musar as Chabad explains that.
It's not even a question.
Yeah.
And what you said before, of course, it makes sense. But it's a different level. It belongs to Hashem and Judaism. It brings out the real...
Did you ever read any books like that? Chabad talks about this. There were the schools of Navardik and others that were very extreme of Musarniks, where they talk a lot about the degradation of the human being, Shiflus Adam. But today I don't find, first of all, there are any real hardcore such teachings. There is subtly.
Half an hour a day.
Yeah. Look, Musar has two sides to it. There's a Musar called Musar and Midas. So yeah, Mesilas Yesharim is not about Pchitzas Adam. Mesilas Yesharim is about a derech and being a more refined person. Mesilas Yesharim is, I think, mostly not even negative. They're probably, Chassidus, you'll also find some places where it talks, the non-Tanya too, about how the Yetzer Hara has to be yelled at, etc. But Musar and Midas depends. You see, the approach of what we usually talk about Musar versus Chassidus is the focus on the greatness of the soul and God, as opposed to the shiflus and the lowliness of a human being. I would say there's a Musar philosophy, which, frankly, Christian and sometimes within Jewish circles, there's an approach where the human being is essentially an inferior creature, evil incarnate. That is definitely not the ultimate Jewish approach. So there are schools of thought that appear to focus on that element, that we are evil, and all you have to do is suppress your evil desire and prepare yourself for a place in the world to come. But it's a different discussion. It's not for now here. I mean, why do we have to go there?
I just wondered, since we said, how could you...
No, but you're talking again. But what you're saying about Mussar is what you heard from Chabad people, not because you learned Mussar. That's why I asked you if you ever learned Mussar. So that's Mussar. Depends. I don't know. Listen,
You married after Mussar. Don't worry.
Mussar at its best is not necessarily talking only about the degradation. Mussar at its best is focusing. Why would you call Pirkei not Mussar? Why not? Not Mussar. You're talking about not modern Mussar, but Mussar Amidus. Mussar as in ethics.
It tells you how to be a good person. It's not threatening you. It's not degrading.
Okay, you mean so? He says Mussar as in berating you, as in admonishing, admonishment type of thing. Yeah. Okay. So I don't know. Are there schools of thought like this? There's definitely the philosophy that there's an undercurrent of such an approach that human beings are inferior creatures. There's no question about it. Even sexuality, money, engaging in the material world. There are many that think in the Jewish circles that these are all necessary evils, which is not really the Chassidish approach. Huh?
Doing the Avera is lower than an insect.
And Avera doesn't mean Avera is the sin, but not the human being.
Yeah, but really, at that point, you're doing something. I mean, you go lower because an insect can't get bad or good. A human being,
That's nothing to do with our discussion here. That's not the discussion is whether the human being is fundamentally good or the human being is fundamentally evil. Yeah. But why are we talking about this, by the way? Is this relevant to any discussion we're having, or just it's on your mind?
Inviting somebody to learn Hasidus. That was why.
The way to invite people is to invite them to a good class that inspires them. Everything else, in my opinion, won't work. Debates. You're going to debate somebody to come to a class? It's ridiculous. And someone doesn't want to learn Gemara, you're going to debate and say, you got to come learn Gemara, or else you're not complete. It's not the way. It's the same approach. That's what I'm saying. To convince someone who's learning, who says, I get spirituality without Chassidus, would be like, I get spirituality without Torah. Fine. The best way to do is expose them to it. I don't see a way of debating this. What are you going to debate and tell somebody your life is no good? Only what I do is good? It doesn't... right. You have to inspire. I would do it through an inspiring approach and stimulating. You can give them something to read, etc., etc. I can tell you, my book, Torah Meaning for Life, has opened up thousands of people that I know went to Chassidus classes afterwards. Because they did not see that in Gemara, what it says in that book. And they start wondering, where's it coming from? How come it's not in Gemara? So when you learn Chassidus, you see it all in the Gemara too. But when you learn Gemara alone, you usually do not see a lot of the so-called more spiritual elements. That doesn't mean it's not there.
When you learn Chassidus, you appreciate the Gemara more.
100%. Even here, 1 second. Dave, you've been here. The appreciation of what Torah is. Torah is God's delights. You're not going to find that in Gemara. They may have an expression here. God says to the angels when He gives the Torah. No, I'm trying to say to you. I'm just trying. Chem de Gnuza. What does that mean? There's a Gemara where the Malachim say, why are you giving your precious treasure, your hidden treasure, to the people? So it's an expression. So most people learn. Okay, it's a metaphor. You learn Chassidus, you start reading Chem de Gnuza. What is Torah like? What is God like? Now, many people who don't know Chassidus will say, I don't know what God is like. I'm not supposed to know. God doesn't want me to know what He's like. He wants me to know what to do. Fine. There's many arguments for it. I've obviously engaged in such debates in my life, but I don't believe in debate. Even when I debate with someone, I'm not debating. I try to give them a taste of it. So they say, really? I didn't know that, Here, my book on the Omer, for example. It's pure Chassidus. You're not going to find that in Gemara. So that's an example. What are you supposed to do on the 49 days of the Omer besides count? No one learning Gemara will be able to answer that question. No way. Because the concept of Birur HaMidas, refining Midas, and what a Midah means comes from the Pnimis HaTorah. Again, you know, that's why I said you talk about Musar in a very thing. Can you give me a name of a book that you're referring to?
Yeah, and so I have to ask you in the way I ask you in a very general way because I'm not. So if I would say that to somebody, what would they say back if they're about Musar? What would they say back?
If they had a name of a book that talks about it, it's fine. There are books that are not Chassidus that talk about the spheres.
In the same way.
The Kabbalah that teaches about the spheres, that's not Chassidus. And you have, by the way, Tamer Dvara, for example, from Ramak. Talks about the Yud Gimel Midah, talks about the spheres and refining oneself. It's not. Yeah, but I wouldn't call those Sifrei Musa. Those are Sifrei Kabbalah, Pnimis HaTorah. Sifrei Musa is a very, very vague and broad term. You have to know what you mean when you say those words.
I can only refer back to what I read in Yom Yom.
Yeah, but Yom Yom speaks in the philosophy of a Musa, of a negative approach. Not talking about a particular book there.
Reshus Chochmah is not a Musar.
No. Reshus Chochmah is Kabbalah. Reshus Chochmah is Kabbalah with a touch of, how would you say? And what would you call Cheves Levovis? By the way, when the Rebbe would call Sifrei Musar, he meant books like Rabbeinu Yonah and Cheves Levovis and Reshus Chochmah maybe even. Maybe not Reshus Chochmah so much because there's a lot of Kabbalah there. But you could say in a broad term, Sifrei Musar doesn't always mean Megit Musar. Sifrei Musar means Musar Midas. Musar as in Musar Midas.
Yeah, but the Shittas HaMusar.
Shittas HaMusar is more, what you said, Salanter.
Saul Salanter was a very great person, but that was a Shitta.
Fine. They use Mesilas Yesharim, but honestly, do you have is there a classic book of Sefer Musar that really captures what we would call Musar?
From my experience, because I used to learn a little in Islamic yeshivas, that there was in the evening for half an hour, not all the yeshivas. No, they were sitting and learning Musar. They were.
What they learn?
Crying.
What were they learning?
Like Mesilas Yesharim and Rabbeinu Yonah, and I don't remember.
Rabbeinu Yonah is negative?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
Archas
Tzadikim, okay. But they may have sections, but I think all of them, these precede Rabbi Yisrael Salanter. So what was Yisrael Salanter Mechadish? I mean, all the Svarim you just mentioned precede Yisrael Salanter.
Yisrael Salanter was, I don't know.
I'd have to study what he was Mechadish.
Very strong in Midas. Midas was by him very...
Okay, but Midas Rois, to fight Midas Rois or Midas Tevis?
To have Midas Tevis, to be, not to be empty.
Okay, so I'll tell you the truth. It requires, Chabad uses Musar in that way because it was definitely a Shita. As I told you, Navadik, there were those that actually, they punished themselves. The pros that the Baal Shem Tov was Shelo, Yisudim. They would what was it called? Self-flagellation. Fasting, extreme fasting. That was breaking the body.
And humiliating yourself.
Right, humiliating yourself. That was definitely the ultimate. But I don't know. I have to find. But are there Sforim that
pharmacy to buy nails. Today it happens.
One second. Are there Sforim that advocate this? Orchas Tzadikim and this one do not talk about that.
The Rebbe Shabbat didn't wear soles, and you don't.
Rabbeinu Yonah, Orchas Tzadikim, this Sforim. First of all, quoted Chassidus all over. They're Shenim and Achleinim. Yeah, they may be they're Darkei Amidas. They're Midas Sforim. But Sifrei Musar in that sense, like all these Sifrim, even Sforim like Yoris Dvash or Drashas. Yeah. But there's another Sforim. There are Sforim that go in the category called Sifrei Musar. It's a broad category. Anyway, it's a different discussion here.
Musar is to put down the person.
But you say that was not Rabbi Yisrael Salanter's approach, was it?
No.
So then the Musar that is attributed to him is a different Musar. I know, it needs research.
You need research.
Yeah, because there's different shittas in this.
And Saul Salanter was an example how to control any evil
impulse.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand.
Could use that one.
Yeah, good stories about him. But Chassidus is completely a different thing. It gives you the whole entire, I don't know how to say it, rich, saturating of the Torah, of what Judaism really is.
What Chassidus does is not focusing on the lowliness of man, it focuses on the greatness of God. It focuses on what is God like.
And also the greatness of a man.
Yeah.
The potential.
Let's learn something inside. I think we should do is stop and start. So we'll have two parts here, because I didn't even... No, we're going to...